During the recent Build 2022 conference, Microsoft has presented, among other things, updates for the Teams App Store that will help developers get more engagement for their applications and get them in front of the right users. In case you didn't know, this is the Teams App Store. It is a place where you can download these little apps, which are basically plugins that add more functionality to the Teams application itself. As you can see, there are some here that are made by Microsoft itself, like Forms, Communities, Power Apps, and so on. And if we scroll further, there are others that are made by external developers like YouTube, Kahoot, Adobe, and so on. They are mainly focused on productivity, and some of these are also created for the educational purposes and are more appropriate for the classroom. But let's take a look at the updates that Microsoft has presented. Even though these new features are going to be mainly targeted for developers, they are going to definitely benefit the users as well, since they are going to help them discover new apps and add functionality for their Teams application. The first new feature is improved discoverability. What this is going to look like in practice is that basically Microsoft is going to restructure what you can see here in the main page of the Teams App Store, and we can already see some of the efforts to make that happen in here. You can see that there are some categories of recommended apps here. You got a big panel on the left with further categories where you can sort what kind of application you want. And up here we see this banner that has further selection of recommended applications. All of these features are going to be further enhanced in the future. Next up is the intelligent recommendation. These are supposed to take the form of app flyouts, which you can imagine like little pop-ups, which might, pop up somewhere in the store itself. Or if we go back to the teams themselves, you can imagine it like, let's say that you start working on some poll here and you ask a question and then you start putting some possible answers here. The teams could show you a little pop-up, let's say here, where it would recommend you, I don't know, maybe the Forms application from Microsoft itself or maybe some external one, depending on how this feature is going to work. If you have worked, for example, with the Microsoft Forms, you already know that it has some intelligent recommendations in there like that. So I would imagine that in the case of Teams, it would work very similarly. Let's go back to the App Store and let's take a look at the search window. Here you can start by typing the name of the application that you want. So let's say Polly for creating polls in the chat. At the moment, the search is mainly looking for the actual name of the application. So let's say I don't know exactly what kind of application I want, but I type in, let's say, draw. You see that the applications that come up are mainly the ones that have the word draw in their name. But this is something that should change in the future, where the search will be more contextual and you won't have to type the exact name of the application, but you just describe what kind of application you want and the store will help you find it based on the actual description and keywords and things like that the developers will be able to add to help the search engine get the applications in front of the right users. The next feature that Microsoft mentioned is the new editorial content and featured apps. This is something that I have already mentioned, this banner here, for example, with the recommended applications. This section, or perhaps the entire page, should be extended with the editorial content, where the applications that you will see here in these categories will be curated by some moderators that will take care of presenting the application, sort of like you can see in the App Store, for example, on the iPhone, where each week you get new featured applications for different categories and purposes. Next improvement that Microsoft promised is a new API for in-app purchases, meaning that when you install some application from the store, you will then later be able to further enhance its capabilities by buying new features or maybe subscribing to some service inside that application. So for example, let's say in the Power Apps application, if you wanted to add the Power Apps subscription into your Microsoft 365, you might be able to do it from the Power Apps application in Teams themselves. The final new feature is a new license management for the applications. So as I've mentioned before, when you start doing some in-app purchases or even buying apps in the store itself, you will not want to lose those licenses when you, for example, move from one device to another. So this is something that Microsoft is going to build to allow the users to move freely from device to device and allow them to take their applications that they have purchased with them. This concludes the overview of the new features that Microsoft has presented for the Teams App Store. If you would like to learn more, please check our blog in the description of this video.